Now we are live. Hi, everyone. So we're meeting January 10th, TEDx workshop prep for our in-person meeting happening January 17th, Saturday, 1 p.m. Thank all of you for joining.
Yes.
So I'm getting all of you together on this video today. You can access the most powerful tool in your toolbox, and that's just a simple story. Now, all of you have been invited to speak because you're compelling people, and we know that you can come up with a story. Now, we did take a little bit of a risk inviting you without all of you giving us your specific talk topic. And from our earlier discussion with Tanya, you're still deciding on your title and your topic. And you know what? We trust you to put something together, but that is why we're doing this call, so you can get really focused. Now, did you guys know our brains are made for stories? It enhances memory, long-term memory, so people can remember what you talk about. If you do a lecture-style talk, think about high school or those boring professors. People will not remember unless they try really, really hard. But if you tell a story, they'll remember. And even more important, you'll get to access their emotions and even your own. Now, Steve Jobs did a very simple TED Talk in a famous talk that he gave at Stanford University, 2005. I'm going to send it to you guys later. And here's how he did it. He told 3 stories. He even says, I'm going to tell you 3 stories. No big deal, just 3 stories. It's a great possible structure for your talk. But in the end, you want to just tell a simple story. And now I'm going to do 2 exercises with you today. And that first exercise is simply your story about why you're doing a TED Talk. And this is a story just for yourself. And this will ground you as you prepare your talk. And I'll start. So I have a story about why I created the TED Talk. And it began a couple years ago with Hurricane Sandy. Now, Patty, who is my co-organizer on TEDx, we were really shocked by what happened. And I hadn't taken the storm too seriously. And then when we saw all the stories rolling in on the news, it was just so, wow, so scary and so moving. And I wanted to do something, and so did Patty. And Patty shared on Facebook about climbing flights of stairs to old people and disabled people on the tops of their buildings because they were trapped and they needed food and water. So Patty was really strong as a cyclist. She was climbing flights of stairs to bring them food and water. And I said, I want to do that. I can totally do that because I had a spin class I'd been in and stairs were nothing to me. So the next day, I climbed 80 flights of stairs to bring food and water to elderly folks and disabled people. And I was so excited about it, I shared it with people at my gym, and I went to every spin class I could at Equinox and asked them to join me on climbing stairs for these people. So I shared about it on Facebook, and then some other people got wind of it, and they shared with me a story that Joe Bacana wrote going to the Rockaways with a trunk full of food in his car. And when they showed up, they were mobbed by crowds of people in the Rockaways. This is New York City. People mobbing Joe for his trunk full of food. Wow. So 10 of us who had already been leading our own efforts with groups of people, we pulled together. And our work was so impactful with just the 10 of us in our communities that one issue we focused on got featured on the front page of the New York Times. So that's why I created TEDxBushwick. Saw the power of stories, and I felt that our own local folks, local leaders, could tell powerful things, can make a huge impact on the world. That's why I invited all of you, because I think you guys are those people. So thank you for that. Now that's my story about TEDx. Can you guys remember what I shared? Is that memorable? Um, that took me like less than a minute to share with you. Now I want to help get you there with these 2 exercises. So the first exercise is simply who you are, the story of your talk. And for me, I'm somebody who just wants to share ideas that make an impact as an inspiring, therapeutic, caring organizer and drill sergeant for people. I will be a little bit of a drill sergeant, as you guys have seen from the emails. But I really want to inspire people with these stories. And that's why I'm doing TED. And that's who I am. So why don't we just go around and share who we are, and if a story pops up that makes you think about why you're doing TED or why you're doing your talk, go ahead and share that. So who wants to start? Do I have to pick someone?
Okay, can you guys see me or hear me?
Yes. You're great.
Okay. Oh, did you want to start? Did somebody else want to start? I saw her. Okay, so I'm Minerva Tantoko. I am a technologist, so my general idea is around transforming technology, humanizing tech is basically the idea. It's tech for humans as opposed to tech for tech. And I've just been named the Chief Technology Officer for New York City. I work for Mayor de Blasio. It's the first time they've ever had a CTO in city government. And part of the story is why I took that job and how I got here. I've been in technology for 30 years, and I've been a CTO for 17 years. And really kind of techie, machine-like kind of place. And so over the last 2 years, though, I've been much more inspired by how technology not only makes things more efficient and convenient and cool and all that stuff, but really how technology can do good in the world, do social good in the world, and can actually democratize society and make society more equal. And also being one of the few women and prominent women in technology, how can we engage more women and girls to be part of this huge technology revolution? So I'd attended a couple of different TEDx's, one in Hong Kong, and when I heard about this, I thought, well, I don't know, what do I even really have to say? But I think, now I'm at a point where, as I said, I have a draft of a first draft where the idea is to go, to end with people inspired to think about technology not just as sort of smartphones and Internet of Things, but how can we use technology to democratize society and empower the disempowered.
Awesome.
So that's it. I don't have a story right now other than maybe why I took I haven't decided which story is the most appropriate to get these messages across, but one potential one is literally the first time I became a CTO. I also found out I was pregnant and I had to decide if I should take that job or not. The second story is probably around when I went to Hong Kong and then traveled around Asia and saw the power of technology, just having an internet connection in some of the poorest countries in the world, how that created tech incubators and startups, where around it is like literally a village with one donkey and there's a startup there. And then the third story might be just sort of the story of my getting this job and how it's been, so inspiring. Just yesterday, I was speaking with both the Department of Homeless Services and the Office of Veteran Affairs in terms of how we can help, the veterans and homeless, get training, get jobs, in the tech industry.
Awesome. Wow, those are three possibly amazing stories that you could tell all of them. Gosh, you know that I used to work for New York City for special ed and their special ed information systems platform. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited to hear about what you have to say.
Oh, good. Thanks. All right, well, that's it. That's all I had.
Okay, great. So in just a minute, we'll share those stories. I'm really impatient to hear your story. But why don't we just go to the other two? Why don't you talk about who you are and why you're creating a TED Talk? And if any stories come to mind, you can say what they are, just like Minerva did right now. We won't tell them yet, but just a little brief synopsis. Who wants to go?
I'm happy to go since I have to hop off soon too. So
okay, great.
Don't want to have to move off. But some of the themes that I was talking about and what gets me excited to talk about and why I really was interested once Patty asked me was the theme of quitting your day job and becoming an entrepreneur. Because I had to go through that and it was really scary, not having known any entrepreneurs and until I moved to New York, and then once you meet, I think one entrepreneur, it becomes a lot easier. But I was thinking about that and just how traditionally, my parents always worked really hard in order to help me get a job, and they were so happy once I had a stable job, and really happy once I got a job at Goldman Sachs, and having to quit that for just taking a bet on yourself and taking a bet on the partner that you have. But I think generally what I'm really interested in is making entrepreneurship accessible. So what I devote my life to is really helping other entrepreneurs get the tools that they need in order to make their dreams come true. And I think part of that is a big part of becoming an entrepreneur is overcoming that fear of not being able to make rent the next month. So those are some of the themes I was thinking about. I don't have a specific story. I was thinking about sitting down and journaling this weekend about some stories. I don't really have a specific one. I know that my partner and I have gone through a lot of scary moments that could be interesting, but not sure which one to
Can I
share. Yeah.
Why don't you just tell us the story of how you decided to jump off and become an entrepreneur after having, an Asian family for so many years drilling it in your head that you need a stable job?
Yeah. So my family's actually Hispanic, but yeah, it was like a similar background where most people think I am Indian, but yeah. Anyway, but yeah, it's something where I met my partner, and honestly, I never had met an entrepreneur that was younger than 30 before I moved to New York. So everyone that I had known was like older, so I was like, oh, I always want to be an entrepreneur when I'm older because I want to get ready and I want to learn more. But when I moved to New York, I met my partner, and the ability to be able to work for 12 hours a day and to be able to see the fruits of your labor immediately was just so gratifying. And it's one thing to save Goldman Sachs $10 million a year, but it's another thing to be able to start something new and to solve a problem that we had. So part of the reason why I actually quit my job to work with Matthew is because I visited a factory with him on one of my half days, and it was just a whole new world I never had known about. I would always buy things at the store, but I never got to understanding or never thought about how it was made. And I assumed everything was made overseas, or majority of things were made overseas. But I visited a factory in person and in Manhattan, and I had walked by that place all the time. It was like right below Dunkin' Donuts, and I really wanted to be able to, understand the real world almost a little bit more of like how things are made. And so I started working with him part-time, and then I ended up saving enough money to work with him full-time. And then we started Makers Row together after that. Part of the reason why we started my current company was because we had a huge problem of finding factories. And so we were literally going door to door. We were looking at print catalogs. And after one sweaty summer of going door to door, we were in the subway, and we couldn't take it anymore. I was like, we need to make a site that makes this easier. And so when you drive yourself crazy enough, and it becomes a lot easier to take the leap. But yeah, I honestly, one of the main reasons why I became an entrepreneur was because I met one, and after meeting one, it didn't seem as scary anymore. So.
Oh, that's so great. Tanya, that's your story. You can use that.
I'm not sure yet, but I'll try to think of one.
Well, here's what I want to say.
Yeah.
TED is really about you, right? And what you just shared with us, that very simple experience of going to a factory, it just said a lot about you and your curiosity and what it could lead to. I think people need to hear that in our event, don't you think?
Well, I was afraid to talk about visiting the factory because I didn't want to be too self-promotional, because that's what our company's about, and so I didn't want to talk about Makers Row or anything like that. But that's really, seeing things happen in real life, that was so different from working in an office at Goldman Sachs.
That contrast is really interesting, and that's a transformation that you went through in your life. Totally.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. What I really love about Patty inviting you is that you are Hispanic, sorry, not Asian, Hispanic female entrepreneur in Brooklyn. And I want for you to just appreciate right now what that is. It's rare. It's exciting. It opens up worlds to all these women, minority women who not thought that they could be in your position. I'm inspired. I'm now a smartwatch designer and manufacturer with my company.
Oh, cool.
And that's why I moved to Silicon Valley. I'm not with you in person because I'm in California. I went through a similar transformation, and how many those women in Brooklyn and Bushwick are sitting thinking about an idea and are afraid to jump off.
Yeah, I've been trying to convince so many of my friends to become entrepreneurs. It's so difficult. But yeah, it's definitely a struggle. And it's also, I think, that raising money for a tech startup, and when 9 times out of 10 you're the only Hispanic women. I definitely don't want to talk about that, but I think that I wanted my talk to be about being able to take that leap of faith and investing in yourself as an entrepreneur. Anyway.
That's wonderful. Tanya, I think you should really consider making that central to your story. As I said, you can mention your company, but don't make it about your company.
Okay.
If you are sharing about yourself, it's totally appropriate and is actually perfect.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank you.
You're welcome. So, we do have one other person on the call, Nick. Now, you could apply to be part of TED, and we're still making some late decisions about people. And he had a really great video that he sent to us literally yesterday. Nick, are you still on?
Yeah, I'm watching, for some reason, I don't think you have me on video, but I'm watching all of you and listening on my phone simultaneously.
Okay. So one thing you might want to try is check your email and see if there's another link that I sent. It should be able to give you access. But in the meantime, we can talk while you're on the phone, and it shows up on the video. So do you want to?
So the last email I have was giving you the phone number. I got the invite for the Google Hangout, and I'm watching all of you.
Okay.
I just don't, for some reason, I'm not showing up.
That's fine. You know,
the actual video.
we'll just continue just like this. So everyone can hear Nick, right? Nick, tell us about why. Yes. Tell us about why you want to do a TED Talk. What's your story? And then tell us about your talk.
So my inspiration for doing a TED Talk is really been my personal transformation from working for the first Barack Obama campaign to auditioning for Cirque du Soleil to then be told that if I wanted to be a great performer, I had to do performance too. So then going and spending thousands of hours performing in the subways of Chicago and Manhattan and Brooklyn, and kind of spanning the range from teaching in prisons and inner city schools to performing on Broadway stages and on tours all across the country. And what I've learned about appearances and how we look and how we speak, and if I talk this way versus if I talk this way versus if I talk this way, or how that informs what our impressions are of people. Versus if you had never seen my face and I had talked this way, you might think very certain one thing of me. You might think very easily I am from Nepal or from Bangladesh. So it's very easy to form an impression upon a person just on how they sound or how they look. And part of my talk / performance is to kind of unfold our notions of people. So I want to play with imagery, and I'm really delighted to have someone on the call who works for Goldman Sachs, because I'd like to, one of the aspects
Formally.
of my talk, I'd like to change in appearance from looking like a Wall Street trader to looking like a hipster in Bushwick, and to looking like someone who might be a local resident from Bushwick, so somebody who's from the neighborhood who's watching all of these things happen. I live right off Morgan Avenue on the L, kind of in prime areas of Bushwick, and I see all of these types of people in my neighborhood, and I am one of these people. I'm a part of it, and I'm interested in showcasing that, and then sharing how I got here and my journey. How did I create? How is my experience informed my ability to create a workshop on hip hop and Shakespeare, and how has that landed me going into prison and teaching, as well as how did my acting training and my experience working for the Obama campaign. And so really, the main piece is how do we go beyond appearances, and how do those appearances inform who we are and how we create the world around us.
Awesome. So that's great, Nick. I'm so glad that you're on this call. So funny to hear all your different accents. Now, I do have a quick question. I know that, Tanya, you need to fall off, right? Okay. Thanks for joining. We'll talk more January 17th, 1 p.m. Great. So, Nick, do you have in mind any stories from your personal life that you want to focus on that have to do with translating transformation?
Yeah, I think one uh, one part of my story that I'm really interested in sharing is um, my journey from going over like a 2-year period, the journey I had from finishing acting school and then being asked to come work on the first Obama campaign in North Carolina, and how my acting training informed that experience, and how my ability to do accents um, helped me as a field organizer, and how that my ability to perform or do accents really just allowed me to create greater empathy for the people I was working with, and it allowed me to connect with them on their level, and it engendered a transformation to actually become bigger than I ever thought I was. I thought I'm just going to be a performer, but then I took these skills to the real world. And then the next stage of that evolution was when I was working in Chicago in theater, and I was asked by Circus Delay to come and audition. And then when I left the audition, the feedback I got was go perform in the street, and how that actually launched a huge, was a huge catalyst for my life. It was a huge catalyst for me. It provided something so much bigger than me being an actor, being a performer. And what I learned and what I experienced and what I really metamorphosis I experienced by going to the street was I really changed. I really had to become whatever people needed me to be all the time. So I was always adopting and growing and responding to the audience that was performing. And the performing subway, it's really what I consider the people's theater. Like it's the marketplace of all human beings. And so you have to become very, the Nick of existence has to become very quiet and have to just arise as and transform into whatever is needed from the people in front of you. And then what that really taught me, and what that really informed the work that I'm doing now in teaching in prisons and in schools and being in the subway and being in the street day in, day out for a few years, how it really informed my transformation, how it really the person I have become and what I've seen and what I've learned from this experience.
You know what's great, Nick, is I heard in what you just shared 3 specific stories that you could share. So thanks for sharing that. Now, this first exercise was to get us clear on the kinds of stories that would be good to tell. Like Tanya's story was awesome. I don't think she even realized that it was awesome. Minerva, you are brimming with some amazing stories. I want to hear all about what you just shared with your own personal journey to becoming CTO of New York City, which is super cool and exciting to hear, because it's like we have the inside scoop, and that's something that people love at TED, is to get the inside scoop, you know. And you're fit to do the 2 Asia. Would love to hear you talk about those. So, are you ready to share with us about either of those things, or anything else that pops up for you?
Sure. Yeah, I think talking the story will help, because I have it written down, but it's sort of written in a lecture format as opposed to a story format, so that's why this is very helpful. So thank you. And let me see. And, I'll have to cut a lot out because there's the story of my startup, as well, which, again, I think my challenge is going to be editing it so that it's a coherent whole. You know what I mean? Because you're right, I have a lot of stories.
Well, so here's something that could help, right?
Yeah.
When you're talking to TED or doing any kind of talk that's, big like that, I find that it helps to just to pretend that the audience is your family and friends, right? Now, this is a very polished and high level, like important talk, but if you can just start by telling Betsy and I and Nick your simple story,
Okay.
that will be that you'll end up doing that for
All
the.
right. I have 3 paragraphs here that I can read out loud, and
Okay.
give me some feedback on here.
Okay.
It's about a minute into the talk. Okay. By the mid-1990s, I did start to notice I was often the only woman in the room, certainly in a senior technology role. There's some advantages to this. For example, there's no line at the ladies' room. But I felt some pressure to prove myself as a techie. And it was especially important to me to have external certifications and validation of my qualifications. After a stint as vice president of IT, putting in the very first local area network, setting up the first emails, and digitizing a magazine, I set my sights on a CTO title. For years, I dreamed of being a mom and becoming a CTO, but I certainly didn't expect both to happen at the same time. I was interviewing for my very first chief technology officer job at a major advertising firm at the start of what would become internet advertising. I also found out that I was pregnant. It was a good problem to have, but at the same time, it made me wonder whether I should take the big job I'd been working so hard for while I was also expecting a child. I was fortunate enough to get the encouragement and support at the right time, and I had the necessary overconfidence to believe it would all work out. So I took the job, and I had a baby. It did indeed work out. It was the consultation with one of my dear friends. I was very, very confused about what to do, and so he said to me, you were made for that job. You should take that CTO job, and you're going to be a great mom. So indeed, it did work out, and it made for some funny situations along the way. I'm heartened to see many men taking fatherhood and family as a priority these days. We need more of that. Both men and women need to participate in closing the gender gap. So much of our lives and the engine of the modern economy are based on technology, and it's very empowering for women to not only participate but drive those forces of change. So that's that section of the talk.
Okay, that's great. That's a great topic. One thing that comes to mind is I'm curious now to hear about some of the like bloops and the sort of real stuff that happens when you're facing being a mom and being a CTO. Like, are there any details, like really sort of down to earth stuff, like you're like shopping for your baby's crib, and then like you get a call from like somebody at the office, and they're wanting something from you, and you're like just in a moment. Stuff that's like down to earth like that. Do you have anything like that you can think of?
Yeah, there's a lot of those, but and the thing I'm having, and maybe when I send you the whole talk, you can help me focus on this, because I didn't want the whole talk to be about being a mom and a CTO. It's sort of one story in this journey.
Okay.
I mean, absolutely. I mean, I was still on maternity leave when one of our websites went down, and so I was in labor when one of the websites was going live, and so I finally had to tell my boss, like, hey, I'm having a contraction. I have to go now. Like, so, I mean, and so it was really like that. I mean, we were launching a website and a kid at the same time. And, finally I had to hang up because, I don't think my boss at the time really got the concept that what labor is like. Why would he? How would he know what that is? And then I was on maternity leave, and the classic, like, I'm talking to the CEO of a big company. He doesn't know that I'm actually breastfeeding at the same time, So, and then as my kid got older, I just met my neighbor. She was my neighbor when I lived in D.C. And I had forgotten this. She said, "You know what I remember the most about you, because I could see you from my window because our houses were, across an alley from each other. And I saw you every Sunday night cooking until 2 a.m. because you had to cook the full week's worth of meals for your family so that you could work during the week." And I'd totally forgotten that I did that. And I was like, oh yeah, I remember I used to do that. I used to cook and put everything in the freezer Sunday night so my family wouldn't starve while I was off, doing my techie thing. And I'd forgotten that I'd done that for like 8 years, until various people in my family learned to cook or use the microwave, But that was sort of interesting. I totally forgot. So there's all these things that happen, that you just make things work, And in fact, one of the reasons that I got into mobile technology was to let me work from home. So when my daughter was born, it was 1998. It wasn't like remote access or even, internet was just starting really 16 years ago, like widespread. And people certainly had to come into the office to do their work. And so and people weren't doing mobile email like it is now, 16 years ago. So one of the reasons I started doing mobile technology that eventually got me my job at Com was I wanted myself to be able to go home and feed my kid and still work after I put her to bed. And that's how a lot of the mobile technologies that I came up with came about, was because I was a mom.
That's fantastic.
Wow.
I'm sorry, I'm doing all this time, but I got to throw in this. She said that's a great story.
Yes, that's a great start to talk too.
Yeah.
Here, everyone's like listening, hearing you say. The whole reason I got into this is because I was a mom that wanted to, be able to work. That's amazing. And that, right there, those little details prepared us to be able to hear the rest of what you had to say.
Right, okay. No, that's helpful. And it's actually good that I heard about Tanya's talk, because there was a section about when I did my startup when I was still in college, and I feel like a lot of people have done that talk, and I could sort of skip that part of my life, or just gloss over it.
Yeah, you can do that. You can just play with the focus. I mean, obviously, you're in an amazing position. I can't tell you how thrilled, and I feel high actually thinking about having you, CT of New York City, share with us. And it's just incredible to have you. So you have a perspective as on the day-to-day at that level with de Blasio, with the details that you could share. And obviously, you can be careful about how you share it, but just little details like that just turn us on. I'm curious to know what it's like to sit in the,
And I'll be honest with you, I mean, I get asked to speak at various things, but the fact that this was in Bushwick is also important, right? This is about New York. This is about a place that you wouldn't think of as a tech hub, and sort of my position. So I think it made sense. It took them, apologize, it took forever for City Hall to approve it and everything. But
do they approve?
Yes, but they will have. Wait, they will have to see my speech before.
Okay.
They approve my speaking, but then they have to approve the speech. So that's like a whole other thing.
Okay.
And I'm not worried about that because it's, I just saw the mayor the other day, and we were talking about this whole humanizing tech, and he's totally on board with it. So I'm not worried about him approving, his press office approving it. But I have to. That's my special extra thing that I have to do now because I'm a government official. I have to actually either tape the whole thing and then have them approve it, and all this stuff. But the content. But I'm okay to speak. But now the content has to be approved. That makes sense.
Okay. Okay. So if you were to talk about any details about you working in the office, that's probably a good thing to put in that thing you give them. And I do think you should aim to get something approved around the details working in the office, because we are super curious to know what it's like to be CTO of New York City. I mean, I know I am after working in tech and special ed and all the drama that we saw.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, you
Awesome, by the way.
and so needed you. I have so many stories to share.
The most awesome job. For me, anyway.
And there's a woman. Oh my
Things?
goodness.
Can I throw in a couple things, Linda?
Please.
Can you hear me?
Yeah,
Yeah.
we can go ahead.
Oh, okay. I'm having a little trouble hearing, and there's a delay because I think I don't have great reception in my apartment for this kind of
Go
thing.
ahead.
Um, I just wanted to say that by telling the details, you become very human, and that's what draws people in. So it's not about being the CTO and saying the right things. It's about saying the things that are real, that make you a relatable woman, mom, doing things that sound kind of crazy, and I love them. Excuse me, I gotta have a contraction. I mean it's priceless. and also that you were a real mom, that you were doing all these things, but you were cooking till 2 o'clock in the morning, taking care of your family, and that just is it's very endearing, and those things make people want to listen and want to know who you are about. So, and the other thing is, just to piggyback on what Minda said, you know Yo-Yo Ma, correct? The performer, cellist. Yeah. People have asked him, how come you always seem to be out there having a good time? Don't you ever get stage fright? What do you do if you get stage fright? And he said, well, I just think of the audience as if it's a big living room and I'm going up, sit in my living room and play for my friends. And that's what he did. So maybe Minda, you knew that. I'm not sure, but it just has really stayed with me as a great way to move through the world, right? When it comes
The
to
greatest speakers I've spoken with have all shared that advice. And I used to work for Scholastic and travel all over the world doing research and training teachers. And one of the salespeople at Scholastic a long time told me, listen, they're friends, they're family. And our brains then are just totally perked to listen. You know? It's so simple, but it's very powerful. It's what all the great speakers that we're excited to hear about, like Steve Jobs, I mentioned early at the beginning of the call. He was a master at just telling these really nice details. You'll hear it in his Stanford talk that I'll send to you guys. But Minerva, I can't tell you how exciting your talk is even already right now with those things.
Great, thank you. It was very helpful for her, so we'll keep doing it and get it good.
What I'm getting is that you are transforming our lives. You've been transforming our lives and making mobile so accessible to us, and that's how it's transformed in your life. I mean, you're now a female mom who is CTO heading a huge city's, the largest city in the world, tech structure. I mean, it's incredible. That is transformation right there.
Yeah.
You've done it.
I think the transformation story, which may be appropriate or not, is the most recent announcement that we made, where we're turning all of the payphones. Because who here uses a payphone anymore? Like, never. Have you ever seen one that works in the last 10 or 15 years?
Just the Verizon payphones in the street?
Yeah. So just last month, we selected the next franchisee for the payphones. The city owns the franchise for payphones. And all of those payphones are going to become 100 megabit Wi-Fi hotspots. You'll be able to go up to these and make free phone calls through Wi-Fi. So that's going to take 4 years, but we just last month announced it. So that's transforming like old, dirty payphones that criminals hide in, and will now become these beautiful, sleek, Wi-Fi hotspots with free phone calls to anywhere in the United States, as well as free Wi-Fi for anybody within 150 feet of it. So that's a big transformation. And at some point, I want to ask you what your thoughts are on having photographs versus not, and we'll get to that. But
good question.
Yeah.
the 17th. And what you should do is put together a slideshow, get a USB drive, put it out there, and bring that to next Saturday's workshop, because that's where you can really dial in those details. John and Sean, John Bates and Sean Gannett
Mhm.
are renowned coaches, and they will give you awesome uh, feedback on what works and what doesn't work. So when you come to the workshop, just be prepared to use those slides when you do your first run through, and they'll really help you tweak it.
Okay. Thanks.
Awesome. Okay, so yes, applause. so happy. Nick was rocking it. Nick, are you still on? I take it. Okay, I take it you never found your video link. So.
Yeah, it's still, I'm still playing with it, but I'm watching all the while.
Okay.
I'm able to come to me.
Okay, that's fine. We can still hear you. So you mentioned a few stories from your life, and I'm wondering if you can just share some of them, just casual, like friends and family. Just share with us about what it was like, you know, figuring out that you should go perform in the street, for example.
Yeah, I think I've been thinking about it more and more as I was listening to the story and earlier. And I think one of the stories I'm really interested in telling is how the process which led me from how I got to performing in the street and how that led me to moving to New York City, and then how that brought me to this community in Bushwick. So, the circumstances under which I found myself performing in the street were I was performing at a theater in Chicago my first year out of school. I was working at a place called Red Moon Theater, and the Cirque du Soleil casting directors from Montreal had come to see our show. And everyone in my cast had an audition to audition for Cirque du Soleil except for me. And so the casting directors came to the show. If any of you have ever experienced Chicago winter, it's anywhere from 0 to -20 and 30 on a regular basis. Like the Game of Thrones, winter is coming, it's dark and cold. So these guys came to see our show, and they sat there very very French Canadian, did not laugh at a single joke, and got up and walked out of the show. And I was like determined I was going to get an audition for Cirque du Soleil. So in the middle of freezing winter with no jacket on, I literally chased these guys down the street. I found out that they had left. I ran down the block with just sandals on and a tank top, and I ran down the block, and I was like, listen, I have come in for Cirque du Soleil. I must be there. Please let me come. In much in the same way I'm here before you today, talking about giving a TED talk. And they were like, you want to audition for Cirque du Soleil? And I was like, yes, that's I really want to. They're like, what are you doing tomorrow? 9 o'clock. Nothing. Okay, this location, this address, ask for this person, and sure. Okay, goodbye. And they didn't tell me anything else. So I showed up the next day. I sat through an entire audition of being a clown for Cirque du Soleil, and after that whole day, I needed majority of the day, and they said, okay, you are cut. You are very lucky to be here. Most people don't even get this far. You have to come back 5 times to even consider for a clown. You have to become like a fine wine to become a clown for Cirque du Soleil. So and then I said, okay, well, what do you want me to do? What should I do to get better? And they said, okay, you want to get better? I said, yes. They're like, do you want to get better? I said, yes, serious. And they said, you must go to the street. You must go perform in the street. This is how the clown become a great clown. This is how the Charlie Chaplin and Robin Williams people, they become a great clown. So I said, oh, I'm 23 and very eager and excited. And I was like, oh, okay, great. So in the middle of Chicago winter, I like picked up all my gear and said, okay, I want to start tomorrow. I'm going to go perform in the street. And so I trucked my my little kind of naive white boy down to downtown Chicago. And Chicago is it's a wonderful place, but it's a pretty segregated place. And downtown Chicago is where a lot of interaction happens racially. And I'm not trying to say that it's a very racially divided place, but the fact is the majority of African American populations live on the south and west side, and Chicago is almost half African American, and 95% of those people live on the south and west side. So the long story there, short, is that I started performing in the street, and I had no idea what I was going to do, and every day was a process of showing up and failing a little bit, and being afraid for my life in terms of, well, what am I doing here? Even to the point where after I got a little experience, I had two young men come through, and I was like, these guys seem strange. And I actually got robbed. I was like singing a song, I'm like beatboxing and rapping, which I had never done in public, but I learned by showing up to the street every day and freestyling and making it up, improvising. And I had these two young men come by and stole my jar of money and ran onto the train. And so there's a longer story there, and I really unpack that story. But it's really this transformation of how performing in the street in Chicago led me to, and getting robbed, led me to wanting to work with youth who are not exposed and don't get the opportunities. Because what I came to realize is this young man, the whole epic story is pretty amazing. But this young man was robbing me because he felt like that was his only option. Mm-hmm. He felt like the best prospect and the best means of his success was going to be to take from me and then run away. And when I talked to other friends and other people who were from the south and west side of Chicago, they told me, these kids a lot of them have never even been downtown Chicago before. They don't get exposed. And we saw 53 schools closing in Chicago last year. Mm-hmm. And so I was inspired to create a workshop on the parallels between hip-hop and Shakespeare as a means of giving people the tools to create their own way, to be entrepreneurs in their own spirit, and to reconnect with their creativity, which, long story short, has brought me to New York, and it brought me to this incredible city, to working in Harlem, to working at Horizons Correctional Facility in the Bronx, to working here in Bushwick with Educated Little Monsters, an arts organization here, as well as continuing to perform in the street and growing as an artist and as a person, which has led me to this incredibly rich community and an incredible path of self-discovery, which is I'm still discovering, I'm still changing, and I feel like it's happened so rapidly based on really this little kind of thing that happened to me in chasing these people down the street. I will say that it's been huge impetus, if not the biggest reason I chose to move to New York City and to do the work that I'm now doing in this place that I consider my home.
That's great, Nick. So I want to point something out. The first story that you told about running after the Cirque du Soleil directors, those little details were so vibrant. Now, I'm going to send you a recording of this video because I want you to hear a transition that happened where you talked about being in the street and the boys stole that money from your money jar. Then you started backing off and talking about the incident versus talking about the little details that were so vibrant in the beginning. And when you abstract like that, it makes us listen a different way and step back and stop listening. So I want for you to refine the last two stories about what you saw with the money jar being stolen from you and how these kids didn't have access and your decision, what you did. Like, you moved to New York City. You know, it will sound something like, when I saw those kids, or when I talked about with my friends about what happened, someone told me that some of those kids had never seen downtown before. I had never thought about that. So it made me see those kids in a different way, and
personalize it.
yeah, exactly. Personal. I think this is really what the power of the TED Talk is. It's the personal story, because it gives us a glimpse into, you know, this person who has, you know, we have a certain idea of, because, you know, she's CTO of New York City. You know, he's an actor. You know, and bring it alive for us with those details, and I think you'll have us ready to approve you. We still need to, as I told you, officially select you, but your story details are powerful, even for getting some of us to start thinking about having you come to
Can I
speak.
just add just another clarification that might help? When you start telling a story, that's when you lose people. When you are being your story, that's what holds people in. I don't know if that's a clarification that makes sense, but when you're there getting excited and you're in the moment and we're running with you after, you know, the Cirque du Soleil guy, that's one thing. If you say, well, then I went running after him because I had to catch him, because I wanted to tell him, because I was hoping that, then it's no longer the moment. So I hope that maybe that would help clarify what. I'm just backing Minda up here, that's all.
Capture the moment versus telling about the moment. What you want to do is capture the moment.
Yeah. But that's great. I heard a bunch of great stuff I didn't hear before. So. Cool.
There's a detail I left out. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
There's a detail I left out, which is, you know, the performing, the kind of the arc I feel, is that the performing in the street led me to creating it led me to creating a workshop on hip hop and Shakespeare, and it also brought me the opportunity to do plays and to do Broadway musicals in the Heights, which brought me back to Chicago that I wouldn't have never gotten if I hadn't been a street performer, because the skills I crafted, the ability to freestyle on the moment, the ability to beatbox like professionally with an orchestra.
Nick, I'm going to stop you for a second. Nick, I'm going to stop you for a second. I want to hear about the first time you successfully beatboxed. And then...
The first time?
Yeah. Or something like that, just a detail. Like, tell us about...
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I have nothing more to say. I just want to hear what cool details about your life there with the beatboxing.
The first time I beatboxed was like I was a drummer and a tap dancer, and I was so fascinated by what I saw coming out of a person's mouth, and I had never seen that before, and I wanted to do that. I wanted to recreate that, and I did it nonstop to the point where I actually auditioned for the regional showtime at the Apollo competition, and I was the only white guy in the competition. And
so, what was that like? So you're standing with this group of black guys at the Apollo Theater, and you're going to go out there and try to do what they do. How did that feel?
It felt pretty. It felt invigorating for me. That was the being in circumstances where impossible odds are where I thrive the most, where I'm challenged the greatest. So it felt like exhilarating and challenging all at the same time, and scary too, because at the Apollo you get booed, you know. if you're not good, you get booed. So I knew that I had to be excellent to even just be there, not even to win, but just to be there and be on the stage.
So capture the moment with us. What was it like standing there with all those people?
Don't tell us about it. Tell us the moment.
I was on stage in that moment, and I walked on stage with a hoodie on and a baseball cap, and I was.
Use present. And I'm on the stage, and I have on this whatever baseball cap, and they say, "Okay, you're Nick."
So take what you were just telling us and use the present tense. Don't use the past tense.
So I'm standing, so I'm there, and I'm terrified, and I have a microphone. All I have is a microphone. I'm holding the microphone, and there's a big 1,000 people in the audience right there, but I can't see them, any of them, and I don't know what's going to happen. And any second, if I don't start moving my mouth, I'm going to get booed off the stage, and I'm hoping that what I'm going to do is good enough, and I don't know if I should do it or if I should say something or whatever, and then I just start, and I just start going, and then I just start, and words don't work anymore, so I just have to keep going, and then I start doing things I didn't know I was going to do, and I'm just making all kinds of any noise I can to survive, you know, to win this audience over, because they're there and they're starting to like, you can feel that pre-boo that's coming. I can feel that boo that was coming my way, and they're like, yeah, you know, and then they're like, yeah, it's like in church when that happens, like people start talking before they get an amen in or something, and then